investigation, solving mysteries in the night. Chasing shadows, finding answers, shining bright light. No one's left behind, in the darkness all alone. With a heart like a siren, she brings the lost ones home. Silent cries in the dark no longer have to be, for justice wheels keep turning, Granny on the beat. Broken voices find their power, call out hope again. With Granny's crime busters ride, no victims left in pain. Bravery in her veins, truth she won't disguise. With a fire in her eyes, she's got nothing to deny. Granny fights for justice, never backs down from the call. For the voiceless and the missing, she'll stand tall. In a world full of shadows, she fights the unseen, a guardian of the truth in this wicked dream. Every story told brings her back to life. Granny's on the case, cutting through the lies. She guards the broken hearted from a world that hides. With unwavering spirit, she wears no disguise. Searching for the lost pieces of a shattered life. Granny brings the dawn after a longest night.
Hello, everyone. Come on in, grab a beverage. We're going to get started. We're talking about the Dan Markel case. It's a case that keeps on and giving. Today we're talking, well, I'll tell you, I always go through kind of the overview of what happened in this case, and then I'll tell you what we're going to get into, okay? So this is Dan Markel with his two little boys. Dan was born in October 9th, 1972. He was a Canadian-born attorney and a law professor. Wrote various books on retribution in criminal law and sentencing, with a focus on the role of punishment in the criminal justice system. That is pretty, I don't know. It is kind of ironic, I guess. His focus was on the role of punishment in the criminal justice system, and we're looking at number 5 people that are going through the criminal justice system for his red rum. Dan was a professor at the faculty of Florida State University when his life was taken. His life was taken in Tallahassee, Florida in 2014 in a red rum for hire, motivated by child custody issues following his divorce from Donna Adelson. And Wendy was a clinical law professor and child advocate who was also employed at Florida State University at the time of Dan's death. And here is Wendy and Dan together. Okay. All right. 4 individuals have been convicted in the case so far. 4. Convicted, sent to prison, guys. All right. The last one that was convicted, this is Charlie Adelson, and he is Wendy Adelson's brother. Yes, that's right. Dan's ex-wife's brother was convicted. First-degree red rum, conspiracy to commit red rum, and solicitation of red rum, and sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 30 years each for the conspiracy and solicitation convictions. 3 more people were convicted. On the far right, Sigfredo Garcia was found guilty of first-degree red rum, conspiracy to commit red rum, and sentenced to life in prison. Sigfredo is the one that actually pulled the trigger that took Dan's life. After a mistrial in her original trial, Catherine McManawa, in the middle, was found guilty of first-degree red rum, conspiracy to commit red rum, and solicitation of red rum in a retrial, and sentenced to life in prison plus 2 consecutive 30-year sentences. Now, Catherine McManawa was Sigfredo Garcia's baby mama. They had 2 children together. And then she also dated Charlie Adelson. So that's how they're connected, okay? So her and Sigfredo were not together anymore, although he was her baby daddy. And her and Charlie had started dating, and Charlie hired them through Wendy, and that's how it came about. On the far left is Luis Rivera, and he pled guilty to second-degree red rum and was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Luis was hired by Sigfredo. Sigfredo initially wanted Luis to do the red rum, but when Luis found out there were children, that Dan had children, he said, no, I don't want any part of it. So he just rode along. Wasn't that nice of him? He just rode along to take care of the red rum. But it doesn't end there, guys, because in June, Donna Adelson, who is Wendy and Charlie's mother, Dan's ex-mother-in-law, is going to be in court, okay? She was arrested at the Miami International Airport on a warrant from Leon County. She was flying to Vietnam, a country that has no extradition treaty with the United States. She is charged with first-degree red rum, conspiracy to commit red rum, and solicitation of red rum. Originally, her trial was supposed to start September 17th of last year, but it's been moved to June 9th, 2025. Neither Wendy or Wendy's dad, Harvey, have been charged, but both have been named by prosecutors as conspirators in this tragedy. And from everything I've heard, Wendy has gotten some kind of immunity, okay? That doesn't mean she could never be tried. They would just have to find things outside of her testimony that she could be convicted on. So, my thumbnail stated that Donna is now in protective custody. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you a video, and we'll talk about how she was moved to protective custody.
We confirmed today that Donna Adelson was moved into protective custody at the Leon County Jail as a precaution. Adelson is there awaiting trial in the murder of her former son-in-law, Dan Markel. According to the Leon County Sheriff's Office, Adelson claims another inmate grabbed her arm back in December and tried to extort her. LCSO says Adelson reported the interaction this week, but would not give any more information.
Interesting, huh? So they're saying that another inmate grabbed her arm and tried extorting her for money. Okay. Well, inmates see TV, they'll know that Donna was extorted. And I want to encourage you guys, I have a whole playlist on the Dan Markel. We are now at episode 16, and each episode, it can stand on its own, but I want to encourage you, go back, look at what we've talked about, watch those videos, because this case is, incredible. Uh, you know, my only explanation is it is the case that keeps on giving. In fact, I would not be surprised if it doesn't, end with Donna, but that Wendy would be next. Here's a couple of notes. Dan and Wendy are both Jewish. Okay. So, but once they had the children, Dan was more devout. So as far as things they could eat, things they could do, watch on TV, all that kind of stuff. So he was strict in that sense. Wendy did not agree with him. Okay. So that was one of their fights, their issues. They're both attorneys. So after she wanted to move away from Tallahassee to Miami near her family. And in fact, she actually did while he was out of town. But then he went to court and the judge made her come back with the kids. So she wasn't allowed to move, which, guys, you can't, when you're divorced like that, you can't just take your kids and leave. You have to get permission from the court. And then let's see what happened after. A year after Dan's death, Wendy dropped the last name Markel from the kids and gave them the last name Adelson. One of the boys had a middle name, I believe was Dan's dad or grandpa's name, and she dropped that name as well. So it was almost as though she was trying to remove anything as far as the Markel family from these boys' lives. Remember, at the time of Dan's demise, they were 3 and 4 years old. They're now 13 and 14. Okay. Wendy, after Dan's death, also moved to Miami, like she wanted to do in the beginning. And since then, so that was it was important to her to move to Miami, right? Now she has moved to Texas, closer to the border, which makes many believe is, should she be watched, which I'm sure they are watching her, just like they caught Donna at the airport going to Vietnam, right? So I'm sure they're watching her. Probably won't let her get over the border, right? If that's her intent. We don't know for sure. But now there is another son, okay? It wasn't just Charlie and Wendy. There was another son named Robert, who was the oldest son, I believe, and he pulled away from the family a long time before this. And now there's talk that he could end up testifying in Donna's trial. So I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to watch that part. Let's see what they have to say.
Upcoming murder trial for Mama Donna Adelson and the role that her eldest son could play. Now, we know her kids, Charlie and Wendy, but a lot less is known about their big brother. Yes, they have a brother. There's another Adelson sibling. His name is Rob Adelson. And Rob has been estranged from the rest of the family for a long time. And we're going to get to why the estrangement in just a moment. But want to get to some big legal news with him because he gave a deposition last fall. And his testimony was the focus of a closed-door hearing after the defense team filed a motion to either limit or totally exclude his testimony from coming into the trial. Now, the defense believes that the state was wanting to show that Rob Adelson believes that his mother is guilty. I want to bring in now my friend and colleague, and we joke, but a lot of truth is said in jest. We call her our resident Adelson expert, Julia Janae, who was there in Florida sitting through these trials. I mean, you followed it from the inception. I can remember not long after we relaunched in 2019, were we hearing the Adelson name, and at that point, none of the Adelsons were charged yet. But so you go way back.
A long time before they were even involved. But yeah, Rob Adelson is someone that we don't hear a lot about. He's never testified on the stand during any of the trials, but he is a part of this family. He's the oldest son, as you mentioned. He's a doctor. You have a lot of professionals in this family. And here's a look at the unindicted co-conspirators from back before. We know Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson now both indicted. Charlie Adelson has been convicted, but prosecutors haven't ever said anything about Rob Adelson because he's not a part of this in their mind. But where he falls is that he's older than Wendy and Charles. And of course, the victim in this case, Dan Markel, was married to Wendy Adelson, all these children of Donna and Harvey. And Donna Adelson is the one that is going to trial in June, according to what the trial schedule is right now. And another reason we don't hear a lot from him is because he doesn't speak publicly about this. But he did once in a podcast, the Over My Dead Body podcast that focused on this case. And in it, he talked about his strained relationship with his family, with his parents, because back when he was an intern for his medical degree, he fell in love with someone that he met, and they were totally against the relationship because she wasn't Jewish. That's something that we saw during the investigation into Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson, of course, because of this conflict they had over him being so orthodox and wanting to follow certain traditions that they didn't approve of. But that happened between Rob Adelson and his now wife. They broke up at first over the parents saying, no, we'll disown you if you stay with this woman. After the breakup, they then reunited years later. And Rob Adelson said his parents did attend their traditional Hindu wedding at that time. And he believed that his parents at that time were trying to make things better, trying to work on that relationship. And it's after that that Dan Markel was killed.
Oh, wow, Julia. So now we may get to see Rob, as you have flagged something for us at Court TV. And thank you for coming on here to really break it down. There's a legal fight going on over Rob's deposition. He gave a deposition in Florida. That happens in criminal cases, and it's been sealed by the court, unsealed, sealed again. We think this is going to be a huge fight. Would you kind of break down the why behind that?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things that they are not going to get into when he gets on the stand because it's so objectionable, according to the defense, and the court agrees on some things. Now, they have to ask those very narrow questions because they can't get into character, opinion. What does he think about his mom? You mentioned it. He may believe that she could be involved in this. And if the jury thinks that, the judge says that is prejudicial. So a lot from that deposition is not coming in. But the court does say that there are some things that stray the line of fact and opinion. We know that Rob Adelson told police when they were investigating some opinions that he had about his family. He brought it to their attention. But there's also this question of whether or not she was an over-involved mom, Donna Adelson. And Wendy Adelson was asked about that when she was on the stand during her brother's trial. By the way, Rob was on the witness list for Charlie's trial, but he was not called. Let's listen back to what Wendy Adelson had to say.
You, Danny. So in this, again, your mom is referencing how everyone's life is being affected by this relocation, including your brother, Charlie. Do you agree with that?
That is what she said, yes.
All right. Is your mom overprotective of you?
Yes.
All right. And is it fair to say she's, a little on the controlling side?
don't think she's controlling, but she's definitely overprotective.
So we may hear something similar to that from Rob Adelson when he's on the stand, but the court's saying he's got to lay the foundation, or the attorneys have to lay the foundation to show that he would have knowledge of how overly involved she was in Wendy's life and in Charlie's.
Sure. So, Julia, to be very clear here, we're going to see Rob, are we not? Or at least we think we're going to see him in this trial for Donna.
We certainly anticipated. We were anticipating him for Charlie's trial because he was on the witness list and not called. But one could argue that he's a lot more important to the storyline now that his mother is the one on trial, and he has apparently observations. What we learned in this deposition hearing transcript that was unsealed, sealed again, is that he has a very strong opinion about not only her, that may not come in, but she may have made admissions to him. And the prosecution said, we're going to ask him about those admissions and any observations he has, any personal knowledge. And here's a look at some more of that transcript where the prosecutor says, I was going to ask him, is Donna Adelson pretty sharp? Is she someone who is gullible? And his response in the deposition was, no, she's not someone who's gullible or could pull the wool over their eyes easily. The defense came back and said that, no, it was a lot more inflammatory than that. She actually, or rather Rob actually said that if there's anyone who puts their interest before anyone else, it's Donna Adelson.
Oh.
Now, the defense doesn't want that in.
Oh,
of course.
You're not right, my friend?
Not like that.
Julia, Janae, thank you for all of this, for breaking this down. I know we'll be talking a lot more about the Adelsons as Mama Donna's trial approaches. We know this trial is happening in Florida, and I want to bring in our legal analyst guest now, attorney Melba Pearson. She is a professor at Florida International University, former homicide prosecutor. Melba, to you now, please. So in this hearing, attorney Robert Morris, who was later disqualified as the Adelson's attorney, said that Rob Adelson's description of his mom is inflammatory. Saying, quote, it was that there's no person who places their own interests first or something like that than Donna Adelson. Okay. No, but what do you think happens here? How much do you think Rob is going to be able to share about his opinion of his dear old mother?
Yeah, so as much as he may have these very strong opinions about his mother, all of that is not going to be able to come in. The prosecution is going to have to walk a very fine line in being able to elicit direct observations, direct admissions that his mother made, or maybe actions that she took in terms of his sister Wendy and maybe trying to meddle in her relationship. There is possibly a lane for the prosecution to get out the fact that the mother, Donna, has meddled in Rob's relationship, as evidenced by the estrangement. But again, that's going to have to be very, very narrow, because it has to be tied to, number one, the homicide. Number two, you can't just get into bad character evidence and just say she's an awful person and she just destroys everyone's life. You need to have much more connection to the actual incident. So, and then of course there's that little issue out there about the unnamed racial slur. And now that we know more context in terms of the fact that Rob ended up in an interracial relationship, that kind of leads you to believe that she may also hold racist views, which is something that, again, could be highly prejudicial if the jury hears that. And they may think, well, absolutely, then if she's capable of having these thoughts, then she clearly is capable of committing a homicide.
Oh my, Melba. And so to be clear, so there's something apparently in this transcript that's been now resealed, so we can't see, but something where, if you know, Melba, is it something that Donna is alleged to have said that was racially inflammatory, a racial slur that came from her?
That is correct. Based on what has been said in the transcripts and everything that's been available, there was an unnamed racial slur that Donna Adelson was alleged to have made. And Rob made mention to that in his deposition. We don't know what it is. We don't know in what context, but we do know that defense counsel was like, absolutely, this is not something that should come in a case in chief. And from a legal perspective, I agree, because again, how is that relevant to the marriage of, Wendy and, the victim, Mr. Markel? And how does that make it more or less likely that she is the person that, committed this crime? Now, of course, beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard. But again, just thinking through for the jury's sort of like logic and their deliberations, what does her using a racial slur add to this particular homicide? I don't think it adds much. It just shows that she may be an awful human being, but it does not necessarily mean she is the murderer.
Right, Melba. A great legal explainer. Professor, as per usual, thank you so much for all of your tremendous analysis today. We'll have you back on the program soon, I know.
Okay. So, interesting, right? Um, I'm curious what Rob may have to say. He had pulled away, and I guess I didn't realize it was because, I knew that he had fallen in love with someone who wasn't Jewish, but I didn't realize, that they got married and that it was a Hindu wedding and all that. So that was interesting to know that. So does he know anything? Did Donna admit anything to him? Because other than possibly being a character witness of how controlling Donna was, I don't, unless she absolutely admitted something to him, I don't know what he can contribute. Now, they did say they didn't call him in Charlie's case, but he was listed as a witness, right? So, evidently, prosecution didn't feel they needed him. And Wendy did testify in Charlie's case. I don't think she helped him. But, she had immunity. So everything that she was saying, she didn't help him from her initial interrogation. Go back and look at that, guys. I encourage you to do that, because that interrogation was incredible. She threw Charlie under the bus. There's no doubt in my mind that she did. Now, I know that there are people who, think that Wendy was totally innocent in this. In my opinion, I don't believe she was. And the reason that I say that is because I don't believe your whole family could be a part of this and you not know anything. I don't believe her brother could have said that statement about hiring a hitman being too expensive, so he bought her a TV. I don't believe that she didn't know what was going on. I have a hard time believing that she didn't know what was going on. Her mother, as far as we know, signed the checks for Catherine McBanawa, because Catherine was the one that got paid the $100,000 for the demise of Dan Markel, and she distributed that money to Sigfredo, who then paid Luis Rivera. Okay, so and she did so from their dental practice. The Adelsons, including Harvey. Harvey started the practice. The Adelsons had a dental practice that was very successful, made a lot of money. And Charlie worked there. And so they made a lot of money. And Donna also worked there, and Donna wrote the checks for Catherine McBanawa. There is no evidence to suggest that Catherine McBanawa worked at that clinic, even though I think that's what they tried to say, but there's no evidence that she worked there. Besides that, you'd have to be a pretty good assistant to be making $100,000, wouldn't you? So, yes, a lot going on in this case. We will be covering it when the trial comes. There's more and more that's little tidbits that come out here and there. And so I'm sure we'll be doing more videos on this case up until the trial. Especially if anything surfaces with Rob or Wendy. We'll be covering that as well. Now, as far as Harvey, Donna's husband, Wendy and Charlie and Rob's dad, I believe he knew everything, right? He wasn't shocked at the airport. He wasn't shocked. So I believe that he knew everything. And I honestly feel that he just pretty much stayed out of it. I think he knew what was going on. I think Donna wears the pants in the family, and it was her. Could he be convicted of? I mean, of course he could. He really could, because he knew, he had to have known, if they can prove that he knew. But what is that going to, is that going to help anything? No, I don't think so. So I would be surprised if they go after Harvey. But again, we don't know what all evidence they have against Donna yet, right? So, I mean, more could come out yet. I mean, there's been so much that has come out in this trial already, but there could be more. There must be more as far as with Donna that we don't know about. So we could be surprised. We could be totally surprised, guys. But yeah, Dan Markel, the case that keeps on giving. What's really sad is that his even his family have not been able to see the boys much. Very rarely. They've even been trying to fight in court and things to see them. As I said, they're 13 and 14, probably getting closer to 14 and 15 now. Who knows what they know? I mean, they're old enough to have gone on the internet and see what's going on with this case. They've got to know that their Uncle Charlie was convicted, that their grandma's in jail. I mean, think about that. Their dad's life was taken brutally when they were just little. And from all intents and purposes, everyone that said anything, Dan loved his little boys like crazy. He just adored them. And he was a good father. So it's really sad, guys. Really sad that they didn't grow up with their father. And who was the one that benefited the most from this? Right? Who benefited the most from him being gone? Who got what they wanted and more? Think about that. Is there going to be another arrest coming at some point, is my question. I don't know, right? We will see. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you all so much. And you know what? I forgot my grannyism. I'm sorry. It's pretty rare for me to forget my grannyism, isn't it? But let's just say this, I know one that I shared earlier today was about living life, having fun, being real, being trustworthy, being a good person, being kind, because life's too short, right? Life's too short. So even though you don't see it on the screen, that's my grannyism for today. Life's too short. Enjoy it. All right. Thanks, guys. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you haven't. Become a member. Thank you for watching another episode of Granny's Crime Busters. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and like and even share the content. You can follow us on any of our other social media platforms at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We really appreciate you guys, and you can also email us at grannyscrimebusters@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.